Purdy looked human today. Like Purdy looked human is the way that I'm going to put it. We have to remember that he's still young in his career. It didn't look good, David. When I say human, I'm just saying like everybody's got the Brock Purdy's a bot. He's AI. He's just automatic, and it's like no, things happen, man. We're way too early in a career to just start making things as if they're so. These things are bound to happen.
Sure.
They are. Young player. Like he's gonna face adversity and he's not gonna look great for stretches in his career. He is a human.
Yep. And I think that's important to mention. Like, it's okay to say it. So we're going to do this. You live tweet too. It's like, you're like, oh, you're being emotional. So no, I'm actually tweeting like what's happening right now. Now, if I wouldn't say like, yeah, this guy is absolute dog water. He'll never be out to anything. My God, why would anybody draft him even with 260? Like that would be like patently ridiculous. I think that he did look human and he looked,
he didn't look good. It was
he looked so these games do happen. I completely agree. I think he got put out of whack with his pieces out, but I also think what this game is gonna put the pressure on him. And particularly Debo being out is one thing. They've been able to survive Debo being out for different. If CMC is out, and then you're also really relying on Kittle even more than they have. Kittle was barely targeted all game. I think he have one catch, maybe.
Like
the other one, he drew a holding penalty or a pass interference. Other than that, I think that was it again. After getting 3 tutties against the Cowboys, you're going to probably, because Debo's out, other thing, like you're going to bring him in to be the blocker, to be the guy that's helping out mid kibitz, right? Like you're going to be doing this is going to be a test. And by the way, the Minnesota Vikings aren't that good of a team. They're missing their best player as well. Their defense is really not good. And they're going to be on the road in an environment where I will say this about Viking fans. I'm going to be there next week. It can be very loud. It's a good fan base, and they are going to be looking at this team that's vulnerable with one loss, and they're going to be pouring it on. And the Vikings still have a guy named Kirk Cousins on the other side. And so I know we're going to get there. I just think that Purdy being human, that's true. But one thing that Purdy, it goes beyond just being human. We had sailing throws, and we're not talking about sailing throws that could have been one-on-one balls, 50-50-ish, or like, hey, that receiver's going to still have to make a play on the ball. We're talking about schemed open, 10 yards of separation, empty spot in a zone, busted coverage. Those have to be made. And so when you look back to the CMC play that he overthrew, that was the game, right? When you look back to the ones that fluttered to George Kittle, that was the game. Ayuk dropping one though before from Purdy. They're just too many self-inflicted wounds here. And the defense played, honestly, really well, given the circumstances. This is a clunker. I mean, there's no other way around it. Purdy not only looked human, he looked like a guy, to be fair, to his guy who I love, Brock, I really do. He looked like a guy that was drafted in the 7th round today. So it's going to be up to him to really rebound because the pressure doesn't get easier.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly that what did they have going into that final drive? Was it 1 yard of offense in the second half?
Yeah. Purdy had 1 yard passing going into that drive in the second half. Like 1 for 5 for 1 yard. What?
What's crazy is the first half was a little rough, and I had tweeted out, I said, hey, it's hard to play quarterback in the rain. What a surprise. The only 2 times that you've really seen Purdy look quote unquote human was the first half in the playoffs against Seattle and the first quarter in the playoffs versus Seattle and the first half of this game. And it was in inclement weather. It was raining both times. So it's like, okay, that's something he has to work on. I get it. But then in the second half, the rain stops. The wind was still there a little bit and it got worse. And then the wind died down and it still wasn't good. So I don't know what to make of it overall. Here's what I'm going to say. And it's what I always said, which is I'm not going to get too high and I'm not going to get too low. I'm just not. I'm not going to kill him for his play. For as bad as it was for a big chunk of that game, they still had a chance to win. So, certainly I'm frustrated with Moody. But the game, the offense couldn't execute in the second half. Quite frankly, they at best, the offense earned a chance at 3 points in the second half. If Demo doesn't get the pick, they don't score 7. Like, the offense would have done nothing in the second half. Nothing.
I hear you, and this is where I think some people are like, oh, we're ditto heads. We always agree. Like, I actually do. That a quarterback for your team that's an MVP candidate has to be a guy that has moments throughout a game that says, I'm putting you on my back. Okay. There were none of those moments. I saw in the game today, I'm seeing tweets right now that say he made all he got them in position at the end of the. Were you watching the same drive that I was? Like,
right.
A dropped interception to Greg Newsome, ball behind, like throwing to a wide open receiver with no pressure. Like, those are the things you're supposed to do. That's great. We don't sit there and say, well, that nothing of import there, but like, no, that's not something where look, the quarterback play today, all they had to do to win this game today is we're talking C level quarterbacking. Okay. We're talking just like league average, baby. We're talking like nothing special, nothing super high, nothing super low. We're talking Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay. That's what you needed today against a good defense. And it didn't happen. And Kyle, this is the thing. I saw people like ragged on Kyle for conservative play calling. Then when you give your MVP candidate the ball in his hands on first, second, and third down, people are like, what are you doing? You didn't run the ball. I'm like, he's trusting his quarterback. You said you guys have been waiting for Kyle to trust his quarterback for years. And yeah, the offensive line wasn't perfect, but the intentional groundings, the other, like, these killed the team today. And so, yeah, Brock, I'm glad. I'm going to say this. This sounds crazy. This sounds like it's hindsight is 2020. I feel like something like this had to happen. We were talking about last week when the first loss would be. I never want a loss, but I hope that this wakes this team up. I hope this puts a fire in their belly that says this can't really happen in this way. Losing games is fine. Losing games in the way that they lost today is embarrassing. And so for a team that like had the crown as like the juggernaut of the NFL last week, they looked anything but today. And so I'm just saying.
The 196 says it was raining. Here's the thing, and I said this on Twitter. First of all, would you say that the first half was better from Purdy or the second half? Because the first half it was raining, the second half it was not. Right? Like, that's
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but PJ Walker connected with Amari Cooper for a 70-yard play down. Was it raining then? I mean, what are we doing with this? Like, I get that, like, a ball can be wet. We're not talking about a downpour. We're not talking about Soldier Field week 1 last year. We're talking about like just a couple rain showers here. It's football. Like, I get they can make it inclement weather. I get it can make it harder, but PJ Walker was playing in the same conditions and was being much more efficient with that offense and was going up against a great defense. And yeah, he threw a couple picks, right? But Brock threw one, and he probably should have thrown at least one other, right? So PJ Walker too. I mean, but if we're using PJ Walker as the bar for how we're saying, hey, all quarterbacks, like, come on, man, this is the XFL legend over here. Third stringer.
XFL legend. Yeah, I mean, I certainly want to be clear. Like, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm not piling on. Like, I'm just not going to do it. But you have to call it how you see it. Purdy just wasn't good today. He wasn't. You know, did at the end, did the team get in scoring position and did he hit some throws there at the end? Absolutely. But he also could have had a pick, and he did miss Jennings on an out pattern. Like, even when it was good, it wasn't great. You know, like, there were things there, and it is what it is. Like, Purdy is going to be fine. He's a young player. He gets to go through these things. He does. But this thought or this lore that he's perfect and he's, you know, he's this and he's that, and oh my gosh, we got a top 3 quarterback. It's like, maybe we do, but not yet. Like, let's, you know, like, this is the first real time that adversity has been there, and it wasn't great. It's okay. It's okay to say those things.